Well, good morning. My name is Gabriela and I'm a linguist. I joined the Department of Anthropology at the National Museum of Natural History about 3 years ago as curator of linguistics. Just for your information, my full name is Gabriela Peréz-Baéz. A linguist is not necessarily a polyglot, prescriptive grammarian, literary expert, or writing and style nerd. But a linguist like myself might be interested in any one of those subfields of linguistics. Linguistics seeks to understand the inner workings of the human language faculty. We're interested in how language is learned, how language is stored and processed in our brain, how language and cognition interact, the diversity of structures that languages can exhibit, what language tells us about the history of a people and their language. And I'm interested in the last 3 points. In my research program, I focus on indigenous Mesoamerican languages, and more specifically Zapotec languages such as Isthmus Zapotec or San Lucas Chiavenese Zapotec. These languages have complex phonological systems, so phonological systems meaning sound systems, with various vowel phonation types. And what I mean by that is that vowels can be pronounced with various types of activity in the glottis. So if you look at the first 3 words, a word like horseshoe would be pronounced with a modal vowel gela, where the vowel is not interrupted. The word for depth, gela, where the vowel is stopped by closure of the glottis, and the word for night, gela, where there's glottis closure, but it's a little bit lighter and it's released to allow for the vowel sonority to continue. So this is a technique to create meaning. Also, Zapotec languages are tonal languages, so they use changes in pitch to create meaning. And so a word like cold is nanda with low tone, whereas a word like hanging, nanda, with a rising tone at the end. And you see the 2 strategies together working for the sour-hot pair, nanda for sour, nanda for hot. There is a yet unknown number of Zapotec languages that are largely mutually unintelligible, yet this dialectal diversity is critical to our knowledge about the history of Zapotec peoples and their ancestral language. So one of my research projects at the moment is a comparative study of tone phenomena in Zapotec languages. We're testing the hypothesis that certain tonal phenomena and verbs were a feature of the common ancestor language, Proto-Zapotec. In our research, we compare 5 Central and 5 Western Zapotec languages, selected because they're the most distant geographically and in terms of the expansion from the central Oaxaca homeland of the Zapotec Empire. So we look at sound waves, spectrograms, changes in pitch, create very nice Excel spreadsheets and try to make some sense out of them. This project contributes to the reconstruction of tonal systems in Proto-Zapotec and answers some outstanding questions about the classification of Zapotec languages. I'm also very interested in spatial language and cognition. Speakers of Zapotec languages describe the space around them in a way that challenges what we know about spatial cognition in humans. It had been assumed until very recently that all humans organize and describe space from their point of view and on the basis of a projection of our symmetrical left-right anatomy. So based on data from Spanish, English, Dutch, and Japanese, we thought that, as these speakers do, that they would, describe the picture like this one by saying the ball is to the right of the chair from the point of view of the speaker. It is only through recent documentation and analysis of a diversity of languages around the world that we have learned that not all humans organize or describe space in the same ways. Some of the early research was on an Australian language called Gugugimetir, and a few years ago I began working on Juchitán Zapotec to look at how, as you can see in Juchitán Zapotec, a speaker would describe the same photo that you saw before by saying "Nutibola nesaria subilla." So the ball is to the east of the chair, and we're talking about small-scale space. We're not talking about geographic space. And the photo on my right, you're right. Nenu pelota kaja ikeni. There's a ball below at its head, the head of the chair. The research on Juchitán Zapotec motivated research on 12 additional Mesoamerican languages plus 5 control languages by an international team of 14 researchers. and you see one of my assistant working with two collaborators from La Ventosa. As a scientific endeavor, linguistics depends on linguistic diversity. The structural distinctiveness of each of the world's 6,000 or so languages contributes to linguistic theory, but as many as 50% of languages could cease to be spoken by the end of this century. So my response as a linguist to this crisis is through developing extensive language documentation, and you see here a screen capture of one of some 6,000 entries of an analytical dictionary of Juchitán Zapotec that I'm working on, which includes lexical, grammatical information, plant and animal names, etc. And I also study the process through which a community ceases to speak a language in favor of another one, with a focus on migration and international and intergenerational transmission of a language. Shkiše pelatu, štio senjovat. Gracias. Thank you very much. Yes?
When did the languages you're studying split from Proto-Zapotec?
I can go back to that right here. So we are looking at around 500 AD, and so the Western languages, which are one of the group, which is one of the group of languages that we're looking at, were the first to split, and the central languages, such as Juchitán Zapotec, were towards the end of the split.
So do you think before 500 AD there was a single language throughout the Valley of Oaxaca?
Sorry, I forgot to repeat the question. So the initial question was, when did languages start to split from Proto-Zapotec? And the second question is whether before 500 AD there was a single Proto-Zapotec language. Hypothetically, yes.